Hiya, this is our third video on baked beans and butterflies. And we don't know how many there are going to be, we'll just see how far we go, but we've got lots of topics that we're going to cover. So we've already covered how we got up with the name of the channel and stuff. And we've talked about how we got into the adoption process. And interestingly, last night we were the adoptive parents when we on an information evening for the agency that we worked with, and we always enjoy doing that because that's an opportunity for us to reflect and think. But stage one is one of two stages before you get approved as adopters, and it was really quite a bit of hard work for us, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It's the most challenging part of the process I found.
Mentally,
yeah. There's a lot of self-reflecting and a lot of reading, and some of the stuff you read is quite heavy.
Yeah.
Because one of the books we was told to read was a Dan Hughes book, which is Building Bonds of Attachment, and listening to the child's story through that book.
Yeah, because we actually didn't read it, did we? We got the CD and the audio CD, and I remember there was one point where we were listening to it, and I had a convertible at the time. We were listening to it, and there was some really quite gross bit of the story, and we were on the motorway, and we came to a stop, didn't we? And we got it on quite loud.
Basically,
and it was the middle of summer, and the roof was down, and yeah. Anyway,
the girl had done something with some fecal matter, and the roof was down, and literally everyone around the car was like,
"Yeah, what are they listening to?" But so there's a lot of reading in stage one, a lot of reflection, but we also had to do a lot of homework, as it was described last night, isn't it? So we had to do family trees, we had credit reports done, we had to do things like listing all of our employment,
our past relationships,
or everywhere that we'd ever lived. And actually, some of that stuff takes thinking about. Even things like the family tree takes a lot of thinking about, doesn't it?
We felt that we might have a bit of an obstacle because I used to be a holiday rep. So I lived overseas on and off for a number of years, and they had to double check that they didn't have to do a police check with the Spanish police.
Because the DBS is something they have to do anyway.
Yeah, so they wasn't sure if they had to have done a check for me in when I lived overseas, but thankfully, because I kept coming to and from the UK, that didn't.
Yeah, your permanent address.
Yeah,
was the UK,
yeah. So it didn't need to happen.
Yeah, but I remember we just setting up on the laptop as a folder with all the completed things in, and then I'd have a go at some of it, and then you'd have a go, and we'd bat it between us and add it in, because there was a load of stuff and a load of reflective stuff, and there was a lot of learning. I mean, we've still got all of those books as well.
And there was some elements in what we did as well. So we would write some of our past experiences, not to kind of show that we would have empathy with the adoptive child, and that we may share similar experiences, but we felt honest and open and transparency. But literally, our social worker would go, so you've put this...
Yeah, when we got to stage two, we had conversations about what we'd read. Yeah. We'll talk a bit more about that when we talk about stage two. But I remember one of the reasons I was not late, but it took me longer to get to a point where I was interested in adoption, was because I'd had times when I was bullied at school. And I was really nervous about, if we had kids as two men, does that give other children a reason to bully our kids because they're different? And actually, so we did quite a lot. Well, I did quite a lot of thinking about that and wrote about that, and it's one of those things that experience was sort of formative in me and who I am, but it also helps a little bit understand what the kids might go through at times, not on everything, because you can't understand everything, but sometimes some of that.
And I think the other thing as well is it helped us to evaluate, because although we wanted to have children and we were both in agreement, because that was key, we was both in agreement, it wasn't being led by one of us. The other thing we needed to make sure that was right is, and these are things that they kind of look at in stage one and your initial interviews, is where we lived, was that the right place? You know, we looked at all our finances and we had to make sure that we were financially ready to be able to take on.
Yeah, I do think though that I think you never overestimate how much children can cost. Because when you think about now, we've got swimming clubs, we've got drama clubs, we've got piano lessons,
we had the ballet, thankfully that stopped.
Yeah, we've got what else have we got with them? We've got Scouts and Brownies. And both of those have clubs and holidays, and all of that stuff. So there's always something you need to spend money on. So actually understanding that was really important, and we also needed to do the thinking about who was going to take time off, and it was sort of almost a foregone conclusion that it was going to be you that we thought about, wasn't it? Because financially that made more sense, but then there's the implications of that in terms of attachment and bonding with children when they arrive. And we'll talk a bit more about that when we talk about when the kids joined us. But so there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of stuff, and I think we did it in the time that we were supposed to do it.
Yeah, it's normally about two months, depending on which agency you go through. For our agency, it was about 2 months that we had, because you will be given deadlines, and it's important that you meet those deadlines. One, because obviously the process, once you start it, you do have an opportunity to pause it, but once you've completed one of the stages, so if you complete stage one, you can have a pause before you start stage two, but also because of panel dates, potential legal court hearings and stuff like that. So there is deadlines for everything that needs to be done.
The other thing that we did during stage one was the reflection workshop.
Yes.
Which is a 1-day workshop. And that was interesting. So it was a little bit about reflecting about with a group about why you had come to adoption, or how you'd come to adoption. So there were people in there they'd all got different stories about how they'd reached that point. But then there was stuff about children and triggers, and so that was the first time we'd really talked about things like smells triggering memories for children, and
washing detergents.
Yeah, washing detergents and all of that stuff. So there was and we went much more into detail on some of that stuff in the prep courses, and we'll talk about those again in another.
But equally, it was a bit difficult as well, because obviously we're two men, and neither of us are able to perform any miracles and bring a child into this world. So we didn't have any of the additional emotional issues, such as those that have gone through failed IVF on numerous occasions, those that can't conceive children, and having to sit and listen to others.
It was really supportive. Room,
yeah, it was supportive, but
and it's a shame actually we're not in contact with any of those people anymore.
But it was one of those meetings where, you know, you went round the room and there was lots of tears, there was lots of sadness, because you're doing this reflective workshop, and then it comes to me and you, and it's like, you know, what's brought you here? And it's like, well, we can't have children.
Although that said, you know, that there was the potential route of surrogacy.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something that we ever really entertained as a valid
I didn't
thing.
fancy a turkey-based party.
No. But it wasn't something that we even really considered, was it? And I don't know why we didn't consider it. But
it was financial reasons, because having
Yeah.
a baby, we just financially wouldn't have been right
yeah,
for
that's
us.
true.
Wouldn't have been right.
Mm.
So
So-
stage 1 is the most difficult phase you'll go through.
Because it's you as the people applying who do the work, if that makes sense. So when you get to stage 2, it's much more social worker driven, and you know you're sort of on a calendar of stuff with them. But stage 1, it's really you being motivated to get it done and work through. And actually, that was when we started really engaging with New Family Social, wasn't it? And starting to get to know other adoptive families.
I mean, it's quite difficult, because obviously we've been talking about stage 1 for about 10 minutes. There is so much more that we could talk about stage 1, but what we suggest is, if you go online, look at your local adoption agencies, and see if they have information evenings. And if they have information evenings, we'd strongly recommend you go along and see those, and it'll give you more information about the processes and give you more details about stage 1.
You never know, you might see us at a couple of them.
You might do.
So so that's really a bit of an overview of stage 1 and what we went through. So that's it.
See ya.
See ya. Bye.